Hey, yo, what's good, what's good, what's good? Welcome to Reflections of a DJ, the R.O.A.D podcast presented by DJ City. Big shout out to DJ City. I'm one of your hosts, DJ Crooked. I've got DJ Never here.
What's up, y'all?
I've got D Miles here.
What's good, what's good?
I've got Jamie the Great.
Yeah, what up, what up?
And we got a special guest. I've known this man for a while now. Every time I went to LA, I would go see him. He's one of the founders of Banana Split Sundays with AM and Aoki. LA Times named him one of the best DJs in 2011. Big man. Been in the underground scene since the 90s. He had a small stint in New York. I'd rather call him a New Yorker from now on, even though he's from LA.
I know, right? Yeah, exactly.
You officially a New York motherfucker to me, man. We got D Mike B in the building. What up, man?
I've been called a New Yorker before, against my will, and it's fine. I take it. I mean, my family's from New York.
Yeah,
and I was raised kind of half and half in LA and New York, but I have a lot of Los Angeles pride, a lot of West Side pride.
Yeah. Nah, you from New York, man.
Well, I mean, musically, yes.
Yeah,
musically, yes.
I want to.
Well, that's where I learned everything. You know what I mean? When I DJ, people usually say like, there's always that one dude in the club that's like, "Are you from New York, man? Like, why? Why do you play this song here?"
Well, you was in so you were what, born and raised in LA pretty much?
Was born and raised in LA.
What part?
I was born in West Hollywood. I was raised in Beverly Hills, and I went to boarding school for high school in Ojai, California, which is like an hour and a half north, like kind of by Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
What set were you from in Beverly Hills?
I was from my own set. I mean, the house I grew up in, like where I lived, you didn't like your neighbors were like several miles away from you. So like, you repped like your whole house.
So you and Stone Rock were from the same French school set?
Yeah. We went to Le Lycée Français together, which was a French, a very, very strange experience. That's it was really a weird place. Stone was one of the few guys who like I connected with like when I went to that school.
Yeah,
because there wasn't a lot of I don't know. It was kids from all over the world, so it's like there wasn't a lot of kids that kind of knew what was going on with music or like knew the new dances and like things like that. And Stone was a grade older, but you could tell by the stickers on his binder, like what was going on. You know?
Yeah. Well, Stone is from New York as well, so two New Yorkers getting along in LA.
From Beverly Hills.
I know, yeah.
He's technically more of a New Yorker than me, but I feel like he didn't live in New York for as long as I did.
So was Stone always like kind of a hard asshole, kind of even in school when you went with him?
No, not that I recall. I mean, he was always, usually you're not that cool to the kids that are a grade younger than you.
Right.
Yeah.
Like when he and I were bros, it was like I was probably in 6th grade and he was in like 7th grade. If anything, he was like very cool to me.
Oh, nice.
I remember, I think he was one of the first dudes I saw with the cross colors.
That's fucking nasty. That's disgusting.
No, at a French school, cross colors.
Yeah, well, I mean, the coolest dudes in the grade above me was like him and Chris Clark, who's a really good rapper who's still around, who was Stanley Clark's son. And like Chris and Stone were like, it would be recess, and they would, they would come out with the boombox or whatever it was, and they would be doing like listening to whatever song like was at the end of In Living Color that week, and like doing the dance. No, those guys were the fucking dudes.
It's crazy.
Like they had the new Bo Jacksons and some hats I'd never seen. A lot of like African stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Sounds like a lot of shit was going on back then, man.
A lot of shit was going on. And it's funny, obviously, the political climate is like really heavy right now.
Right.
And we used to get chastised, me and those dudes, for wearing like Fight the Power shirts and like fuck the police stuff and like all these things when we were like 11 or 12 years old. And there were times where I was like, what were we thinking? And then I was like, yo, we were way ahead of the curve on all this shit. Like, we were thinking like fuck the police and Fight the Power when we were 11 years old and we were being told to shut up.
In Beverly Hills. In Beverly Hills.
In Beverly Hills, that's right.
Wearing cross colors.
we had a lot going on in Beverly Hills. I mean, Alchemist lived around the corner from me. We didn't know we had shit like really bad in there when we were kids.
That's so crazy. So what were people saying? Like, yo, why are you wearing that shit? Like, a lot of people. I remember back in third base, why these white boys like why are they talking about how white people suck and they white kind of shit? Remember that with third base?
Well, yeah, of course. Well, I mean, third base was like, when I found out that was a thing, like after the Beastie Boys, like, because the Beastie Boys were like a whole, they had started to carve their own path, like after the fake Run DMC stuff. But then like third base was just like a straight up rap group. And that was amazing to me. I was mostly upset by MC Search's ability to have a flat top. And I was just like, how? Like, how do I do it?
Yeah,
like I would show her pictures of Search and be like, how can I do this?
His shit was always on point. And plus he had his name in the back.
Yeah, his name in the back. And he would take third base back there. He could do everything. Like he was kind of like he was almost on like a kid and play level.
Yeah, he was.
And I was like, it's not fair.
He had that Il Jufro though, right? Was it? Do you think it was like a lot of product, or it was like a Il Jufro kind of shit?
I think it was just an Il Jufro that was so.
Yo, Jufro is hilarious.
You never hear that? It's just like
Search's hair and head. Well, like I mean, I think it's safe to say that Search is a little bit dense in general,
right?
And so I think that I told you I was going to talk shit, and I think that his density probably transpired like into his hair. Like he's so dense in the brain that his hair got mad tight.
Jesus Christ!
Not West Coast tight. Like out here, we're like that's tight, but in New York, if they're like, "Yo, your shit's mad tight," it was like not a good.
Oh, okay. He said West Coast tight. I understood that part.
Yeah, well, West Coast tight is like, dude, it's fucking tight. But then East Coast tight is like, yeah, I said some shit and he got mad tight.
Yeah.
He got upset.
Hey,
it's like uptight. It's like an apostrophe tight.
Hey, yo, Mike. So it's kind of an ill coincidence that we're recording with you today because tomorrow is going to be like the anniversary of AM's passing, right?
Is that right?
August 28th, Friday. Yeah. Rest in peace to AM.
What day it was, I could have acknowledged that. Yeah, so that'll be 11. That's 11 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
it's crazy. And I definitely want to talk about Banana Split. We have a lot of questions because Banana Split is this legendary party in LA.
It seems to be gaining a little bit of notoriety too. I like that. Like it has this weird kind of like it could be like like when we were DJing, like nobody was talking about fucking like Paradise Garage and like places and like things like this, and then 10 years ago, everyone's like, "Yeah, man, everyone knows like that's the legendary shit." I'm like, I don't know. I DJed in New York for 10 years, nobody mentioned it. You knew it existed, but people didn't talk about it the way
exactly. Especially like they're talking about it right now.
Or we wanted this or that, and I feel like Banana Split over like at the time it was kind of like, oh, you're part of that clown shit. And then now years later, like it's all like people are really I think because you're seeing what happened like after that, like it's a little more Steve Aoki being who he is, and then the legend of AM, which continues to grow, which makes me happy all the time. Like I get hit up a lot of times by strangers, like in DMs and emails, or like even like if they see me on the street or something, they'll be like, "Oh man, like I just watched the AM documentary. Like I saw," or like like people are like people are turning 18, 19, and then like kind of watching that. I guess probably like the way that we would watch like Beat Street or like however we learned about what DJing looks like, for our generation, which is kind of cool because I'm glad the making of that movie was a very iffy experience on a lot of levels. So I'm glad that it worked out really well and it told the story honestly, and that people, especially now, like people want to talk about Banana Split. Like kids are posting pictures and being like, "Yo, can you imagine what it would have been like to been here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, finally they get it." Like this is amazing because I felt that way at the time. I mean, you came through the Banana Split a couple times, right? Crooked and never.
I've never been, man.
I never made it to Banana Split.
Nah. You never made it, right?
I think the one time I was about to go in, like I went there late and it was closing and everyone was leaving and everyone was like, "Yo, where were you? And I was like,
that was a pretty common thing, was people could come there after their gigs, because in the event that AM had the last set, no one could tell him to stop. Like, it was a very uncommon thing for a Los Angeles club to go past 1:45.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At that time. And it's kind of like it was like a thing where, like, it was Sunday night, so it was on the low, and like no one there had more power than him because he owned the club. So like if he played the last set, he would play till like 2:45 sometimes.
Wow.
And the lights would be on and the bartenders would have their fucking arms crossed and like all this shit. But people would be coming like from their other gigs and walking in and still hanging out, which was really always the illest. Because then he would start playing hip hop too. Like those were some of the few like occasions of him, like just, you know, the lights come on and you got nothing to lose and you just start flexing on purpose and you just like,
having fun. Play
like,
what you want to play.
Everyone can see me and I'm just gonna like. That's when he would start like really doing his. I'm way better than anybody DJ did.
So
I'm way better than anybody.
You guys like Banana Split. You guys had like some of the first LA shows for like Lady Gaga, right? Wiz Khalifa, Santi Gold.
Lady Gaga was actually one of the first like I feel like payola gigs that we took.
Oh, they paid y'all to have her.
Allegedly.
I mean, I didn't get paid from it, but it was definitely a thing where every week to do the guests, like we never wanted it to seem, because things could get a little bit hectic. Like the guy who Matt Colin, who was the promoter and Steve's manager, you know, like everyone had different like favors to do for different people. Like I had DJs I wanted to put on. Matt managed DJs and had people he wanted to put on. AM obviously was like, you know, he had like 800 bastard DJ children that wanted to play there. and then Steve had any number of like, you know, actors and jerk offs that like couldn't DJ that like you'd have these guys play. Let's have the guy from Malcolm in the Middle DJ, or you know, let's have will.i.am play, or you know, whatever it was. So we decided that there would be a weekly email where like we would say like, you want to have this person play, and it had to be unanimously agreed. And then if it wasn't, the person kind of got to make their case, and then like it would get shut down. And then sometimes it would be different week to week. Like I would like LMFAO was LMFAO, but they were born out of our party.
Yeah.
And before people knew who they were, you know, they were just there every week, and they were giving me a lot of like, hey, can we play? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And then it went from 1 week Steve being like, no fucking chance, like those guys, no way, man. And then the very next week being like, yeah, man, like definitely let's have those guys, you know, like i.e. I don't know. Someone told them they were cool.
Well, honestly, do you think they was gonna blow up the way they did?
No.
Look at his face.
No way, man. But like, I keep it as a reminder to myself. I keep this in my studio.
Anything is possible, right?
Yo, that's crazy. Don't say that. That's fucked up.
It doesn't matter how old you are or how much people tell you don't do it. Just do your shit.
That shit.
I can honestly say, like, I was taught to like, you know, I was kind of like Stretch was working for Stretch Armstrong was kind of how I learned how to make really quick decisions about music. Like I would watch him do it all the time. Like people would be like, yo man, check out the new so-and-so. And like in 30 seconds, he would be like, this is dope. Or like, this is garbage. Like get this shit out of here. And I always thought that was really cool. And I thought that meant like you had the ear. And it's true. Like after a while, like you can kind of tell, but it doesn't mean you're always like it. You could be right about something being trash, but it doesn't mean that the whole world is not going to love it.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, and Foo is my dude. Like that. I mean, Red Foo is a legend. Like he's a legend in LA. He's a relevant producer. You know, he produced the original version of R.O.A.D back in the day. He produced like I think half that first Black Eyed Peas album. And
wow.
The way that I was introduced to him was as the man who taught AM how to make beats. I don't know what that means. None of us ever heard a beat that AM made, but like,
yeah. Interscope is still waiting for the album.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's just like, you know, but like that was their thing, was like they had met in the 90s and Fu showed him how to use a MPC, and he was just around. They would play cards together, and Fu was really, really around when we started Banana Split. Like he would be hanging out at AM's house in the sessions, like in the weeks leading up to the first couple Banana Splits. We would hang out at Adam's house and just listen to all this music. There was so much shit coming out. Like all the Ed Banger stuff. And then there was like everything going on the holler board. And then there was like so many mashups and all the kind of up-tempo different things that like the Rub was doing and that Hollertronics was doing.
Right.
Yeah.
And we wanted to find a way to get it all to live somewhere on its own. And that was kind of how the marriage of like AM and Aoki kind of came about. Was he was like, right, but like how are we going to get like hipster girls to come, you know, like how are we going to get like the girls from Cinespace to come to this party? And it was like, well, Steve Aoki's the man for that. So it was like a kind of a perfect convergence. But Fu was always around. Like he would be on the couch, and he's a musician, so he would hear that shit, and he would never like interrupt or like get in the conversation, but you could tell his like wheels were spinning. And then like he would like put on his headphones and do some stuff, and then kind of by the end of the evening he would be like, yo, you guys like check this out, and he would play us a beat that he made like in his headphones, and he's like, does this shit sound right, like the shit that you guys are doing? And honestly, like he would nail it. Like he was making like banging electro beats. Like if you listen to all those early LMFAO beats, like they're bangers, and they sound they're all really derived from like the popular big Banana Split kind of anthems. Like there's always something in them that you're like, oh shit, like that's like the Mastercraft lead, or that's like a Daft Punk bass line, or like there's always like that's how you make hit records, right? Like you find out like what works from other stuff, and you sneak it in. To get more specifically to the point, to see what happened with LMFAO was very interesting, because when the party started, he was just there, and he was a hip hop dude, right? So he had like, you know, like jeans weren't like baggy per se, like in 2006, but like hip hop dudes wore like big jeans.
They were loose fit. The loose fit boot cut jeans. Boot cut.
Waist, but like a 50 leg. You know, like you had bigger pants than you did. Like that was it was really easy to tell like who was there from where and like what their deal was in LA. Because it was like, like the skinny jeans people were hipsters, and then there was the streetwear people, and then there was the hip hop guys, and AM would bring there would be a lot of guys that felt, I think, not comfortable at the party because of that. Because a lot of guys would come to be like, yo, they used to refer to electro and rave and dance music generally like on Fairfax and from like the Power 106 guys and stuff. They would refer to it as that weirdo. They'd be like, yo, man, y'all play that weirdo over there. Like, what's
really?
Like, like they just didn't know what it was called. Because, you know, like in the 90s, like, you know, techno was gay, as they would say. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you go to raves, like that's gay. Or like you go to this, or like, you know, like it was like, there was a lot of like, you couldn't be like a hip hop guy that did rave stuff, or you couldn't be, it was like I was a closeted raver and electronic music record collector. Like I used to go on my lunch break working at like Game Records to Satellite in New York and buy a bunch of techno records and like hide them shits like so deep in my bag. You know, like it was just like I would get home, like I couldn't listen to it. We had turntables in the office. I was like, no, dude, I'm just listening to this Beanie single.
Yeah, Shecky didn't want to hear that shit at the time.
Shecky was like, what is this?
Becky and I bonded over like he was just like, oh, like you're in, like he caught me after hours in there like smoking weed and listening to Daft Punk once. He's like, oh, you like this shit? Like I love this shit, and that was actually a bonding.
Oh wow.
But anyway, there was a lot of disparity in the crews that were in Banana Split. You know, like the hipsters would be on the dance floor going crazy, waiting for Aoki to do his shit. And then you had all the AM fans that were like, wait, this guy's on the cover of Us Weekly. Like, why is he in here like sweating and playing like this crazy music I never heard before? And then you had like just random people that were like, yo, this shit is free on a Sunday night and you're giving out free beer. And like, I looked, the secret was at the door that anyone who was wearing a suit or asked if they could buy a table or was trying to grease the doorman to get in would be turned away. Like that was just how we kept it so that there wasn't like shitbags in there. It was just like, because every other night of the week that club was a nightmare. Like I wouldn't set foot in that place because it was all like bottle service and like, I mean, unless I was DJing, like you just didn't want to be in there.
Right.
Yeah.
It was like the not that cute end of that shit.
But you guys brought like a house party vibe, like an LA house party vibe to Hollywood, right? Pretty much.
How do we take it and make it cool?
Right.
Because when we were listening to the music, it was like we want to find a place to do this party, and Adam was always like, yeah, then but where could we do it? Where could we do it? And I'm like, yo, dude, you own a nightclub, right? I mean, it's your club. But I don't own a club. And the thing was back then, there was a thing in LA that was just you can't do weeklies on Sunday. There was no Sunday weeklies. Like it was just a thing. It's like people don't go out on Sundays. Bolt House, that was the only night of the week that Bolt House did not do a night on Sundays or one of those guys. Like Monday through Saturday, there was something cracking the whole week. Sundays were just like you don't go out. So that was how we got over on that. We're like, well, if we give away free beer and it's free and people can wear sneakers and t-shirts, like surely we'll at the least get people in there. Like, I don't know if we'll make money, but like it'll be cracking.
They will come, right? Free beer, no entry.
With the free beer, that's all you have to put on the flyer.
But it was dope. You guys had like 40s and shit, right? You guys were like giving out 20.
We had 40s was at Aphex. 40s was at 12. We had a keg of beer that we would put on the dance floor. It was a full keg of Sapporo. That lucky for me would come out right at opening, because that was also the idea. Was like I was like, cool. Well, whatever we do, can we make it so that people are there like when I'm playing at 10 o'clock? So like the doors would open and then the dude would just come out and put the keg in the middle of the dance floor, and one of the bartenders would just stand there and people would just line up, and then eventually start like they would get their beer and then stay there and kind of keep dancing because they would get back in the back of the line. So the line for the beer became kind of the dance floor for the first hour, and then once it got cracking, I mean, I like to think we always went through the whole keg, but I think at a certain point we just started like getting rid of it at like 10:45 or whatever. It's like, all right, these motherfuckers have had enough free beer, get it out of here. But that was important in dudes like Red Foo coming on in their like hoodies and big jeans.
Yeah,
and he would, they would see that, and like I think. People wanted the hipster girls were looking like real cute. So there was a lot of like hip hop guys and radio DJs and stuff that were like not getting any action at Banana Split because they were like not getting looked at because they're just like, oh, like you're just some dude in big pants. Like you're not who I'm trying to hang out with.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so, and Fu was a ladies' man, I would say. Like he really was out. Like around that time, he had a website called redfoo.com. Which was like a MySpace that was just for him. It was a dating site that was for like dating him. And he was the only male allowed on the website.
What is this? When was this? What?
This is like some VH1 like Love for Ray J type of shit, but just for Red Foo, apparently.
2006. It was called redfoo.com, and it was a social media site where you could sign up and put your profile and all this stuff. But like Foo was like the Tom of MySpace of it. But like no other men were allowed to like be on the side.
I've never heard this. This is amazing. This is crazy.
It was a short-lived endeavor, but if you look at old pictures of like of him in the early days of Banana Split, he's always got a sweater on that says redfoo.com, and he's always like wearing like his own branding. And like when that started, he started then like that wasn't working for him. There.
You think?
The dating website did not work.
Yeah, you're wearing a shirt that just says your name.com with like a picture of yourself on it. So that wasn't working for him, and is this thing on? And he was I remember him and Sky Blue, his little cousin, they would come every week and they would wear different stuff. Like they were trying out some looks.
Wow.
And so they showed up one week. I shit you not, this is some real shit. They showed up in full 90s rave wear. Like for 1 second, they're like, wait, like, are these guys ravers? And they came in full like Jinkos and like orange Caltrans vests and goggles and like a whole kit. And like that didn't work. And I kept seeing them kind of try different stuff. And then one week I'll never forget it. He showed up in like the 3/4 length capri zebra print denims that he just wore, I think, for like the next 3 years straight until he started making them himself. Ultimately, it became like party rock lifestyle wear. Like they would make those zebra pants.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know where he found those or who made those for him or what kind of like young girls' pants those were. He somehow like just pulled himself into. But like that week, I was like, oh, look at Fu. He's taking home like those super cute girls that are always over there in that corner. Like that's crazy. Like him and like, he never took that shit off again.
Wow.
And started, and all those beats that he was making, while in the beginning days of Banana Split, he started rapping to him and writing to him.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that I keep this party rock lifestyle so close to where I work all the time is because my infamous words that I said to Fu, I'm pretty sure I was within the first 5 people to have the I'm in Miami Bitch demo CD. I still have it. It just says I'm in Miami Bitch for Mike B on a burned CD. And I listened to it and he's like, what do you think? And I was like, you got to bury this. Like go to the desert.
Yeah, man.
As you can.
Wow.
Play this for like living human beings because they don't deserve this kind of torture, I was like, this is a nightmare. And I remember my first question to him was, have you ever been to Miami? And he's like, nah.
That's crazy.
But like like I said, the way the clicks were like chopped up in Banana Split, it wasn't like over the years it became like a unified scene. But in the beginning, when everyone's like, "Why are we here?" and like, what are we supposed to do? There was a lot of people that weren't fully comfortable there. You know what I mean? Like Will.I.am, and it was basically like he was getting kind of the cold shoulder from a lot of people until the week that BEP showed up. And Will was like, yo, that's my man, Red Fu. And he brought like him and Sky over to their table. That's literally like the week Steve decided that Fu was dope and that he like really fucked with LMFAO was because he saw that Will was like, he's like, no, you don't understand. This guy produced half our first album. Like, he's the man. Like, whatever he's doing, like, he's dope. Because, that's another, in many ways, like, that's, they're very similar.
Yeah.
Of guys that, they know they love to party and they're creative geniuses and it doesn't always manifest in a way that I would necessarily want to hear. Right. But like, I respect, the work that those guys do. I mean, like Black Eyed Peas, like that's the ultimate of like where you can kind of take that kind of music, but also like, it's the ultimate, turds of music.
But they just make really digestible music for the masses, right?
It's digestible. I mean, and those guys being there like that. I mean, that first year of Banana Split, audio wise, is like fully what informed that whole album. That I don't remember what it was called, but the one that had Tonight's Gonna Be a Good Night on it. Like that whole dance music, that first time where they really like went full in on like synths and 4/4 kicks and like making like what is like still on the radio now, basically, which is like dance, rap. I don't know. Whatever.
Was that the album that had I Got a Feeling?
I was just like, what did we do? Like, we just wanted to like have a cool underground party, and now like Power 106 plays house music in the middle of the afternoon.
That's crazy. It was a really crazy time, but
it was a very weird time. But that was kind of like and that's how that record happened. Was the cosign of like you would have guys like Big Syph, who's who was very interested in like seeing what was going on in music, and he would come there every week, and he's not like a dance floor guy, and he's not there like picking up chicks and whatever. He was there to like hear the music. That he was like, what's going on with this? Yeah, and then you would have guys like Fu who would bring. When he brought him the demo, when you don't spend your whole life like being a raver and like having a secret electronic music collection and having like really informed taste about dance music, like, and you just hear some shit that has a bass line and a synth and a 4/4 kick, you're like, yeah, it sounds good enough to me. You know what I mean? Like, is this something cool? Like, is this, this is like a cool exclusive, like weirdo record that I could play at drive time on Power 106, and they started like playing it in the mix. And I guess Pitbull was in LA and heard it and realized it was a song about Miami, and then did his verse on it and brought it back. And then 9 months later, I was on the same plane with Fu and his whole squad, and Ian Fletcher, who managed them, who was AM's boy, who was also there. Like, it was just like a crazy convergence of like, if this party hadn't have been going on, like none of these people would have been in this room together.
Right.
And then next thing you know, we're all flying to WMC, and like these guys are in first class, and it was legitimately Fu's very first trip to Miami. Like, and I was on the plane with him. And it was crazy because literally he got off the plane and people are screaming at him in the airport, like, I'm in Miami, bitch. And there's like stickers everywhere. And then we get to South Beach and there's bootleg I'm in Miami, bitch t-shirts everywhere. And then like the label, they had just gotten signed and they paid for like the plane, they had the planes with the signs that fly up and down the beach.
Yeah.
They had LMFAO live at Nikki Beach, tomorrow, like all like, and that was he was literally like, for a man who had never been to Miami, bitch, like that was the most Miami anyone could be, bitch. You know what I mean? Like that, like that's so crazy to me. Like I always think, like I feel like it's an inspirational story. Like as much.
Sound like it.
My opinions about their music being, relatively unchanged. It's crazy to me that they had like 8 hits. I mean, you guys were playing in real Vegas clubs, like
yeah.
Those records, right? I mean, like those.
The first one was probably that Clumsy remix that he came out with.
Which one was that?
The one with Fergie. Remember, she had the song Clumsy.
Yeah, with the like.
He did that remix that was like 125 BPM.
Yeah, and that was him trying to kind of do the like Motown, like everyone was playing the Motown Baltimore records.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way that he did that Fergie remix was kind of his version of like the Mr. Postman or like the Respect remix. Like he found that sample and like, oh man, I forgot about that. I had to play that shit too. Yeah. And when we Crooked and Nev and I, we were all signed. What was we were all Undisputed.
Undisputed. Yeah.
I used to go down and play at Stingery in San Diego. I had the special version. I used to have to play I'm in Diego, bitch. And like it really was like it was a constant reminder because it was crazy. It was like it's how my mother must feel about like my success as a DJ. You're like, well, I'm proud that he's successful. But like, I wish it hadn't been this way.
She probably just doesn't understand. It's like, how did this happen? Like, it's.
Yeah, my mom just like, I don't get any of this. Like, I'm glad you did well, but like, this seems crazy.
I completely forgot that we were all signed to the same management at the time.
Me too, man.
Which is Undisputed. Yeah, we were on the same management crew.
You made as much money as they made me, which was not a lot. It's easy to forget. So I think the best thing that came from it was the relationship. Like I think that's really how I officially met you.
Yeah, that's how we kind of all clicked. We were like a crew.
Exactly.
Post body. I played in Vegas a couple times, like pre-Body English.
Mm-hmm.
But like post Body English era, like that, like Undocumented or Undisputed was like the only gigs I had really in Vegas, and being out there and like seeing what you guys did and I'm trying to understand that life as much as I could.
Yeah, that was an ill time because I feel like we had like a Light in the Bellagio, right? Was one of the first bottle service clubs, and they booked Stevie Aoki for the first time in like 2006 maybe. And then
was he still on vinyl? Or no, he had gotten his Serato?
I think it was definitely Serato. But
I assure you, seeing Steve Aoki play on vinyl was really something.
I've heard stories, but by that time he sounded pretty good.
Nice.
But I always thought it was weird because I would meet certain people in LA and they didn't know like house. They didn't know certain house. They didn't know like David Guetta. They didn't know, some of the Bob Sinclairs and all of that shit that was popping at then. Yeah. And then so I would play something. He'd be like, "What is that? What is that?" And then in my head, I kind of always thought that Baltimore Club was one of the first entry level sounds that introduced some LA people to like something very close to house. Does that make sense?
1,000%. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It was like it. I mean, I can trace that as someone who is into both things. Like I really got to see like when everything converged.
Right.
Mhm.
I've known about Baltimore Club since, probably the late 90s. And then, even like Frank Ski Whores in This House is technically a Baltimore Club record.
That's like one of the first ones, actually.
Yeah, that's what, like 1990. But like, I didn't know that was Baltimore Club, but I was aware of those kind of like breaks records and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And Diplo went really heavy on that stuff with Hollertronics.
Yeah.
Which then kind of transferred to Mark Ronson playing the KW Griff, Aretha Franklin Respect in his Essential mix in like 05 or something like that.
Big record. Yeah.
Huge record.
Yeah.
But also like when that hit, like I remember hearing him play that in his sets at the time and being like, yo, that's fucking crazy. But there wouldn't be another record like that followed it. Like he would follow it up with something. Like you wouldn't play like a half hour of Baltimore Club, but you would play like certain Baltimore Club.
You'd be like, you'd go into that and then you go into like Planet Rock or some shit. Like you would like, you'd go around into that area. You know what I'm saying?
But then in classic form, like when AM got his hands on those records, he got his hands on like 5 or 6 hot Baltimore Club remixes. And of course, like the way he played them and where he played them made it seem like it came out of nowhere. Like it was some new shit that he just invented. I remember being at a dinner at Bossa Nova with Stone and a bunch of other people, and him saying like, yeah, like anyone who's playing fucking Baltimore Club right now is just biting AM. And I was like, well, no, not, you know what I mean? Like, and I know, like he's not from Baltimore, and like there's guys who have been doing this for a really long time, and also like people in LA in bottle clubs like didn't know about Hollertronics or like what Diplo was doing at the time, which is kind of like what Steve did. Like it's what you say about Steve is really funny, because what we wanted to do with Banana Split was bring all this cool underground music like Baltimore Club and like what like Dave Taylor, also known as Switch, was doing, or like what the Headbanger guys were doing, and try to bring it to show people that there was exciting stuff going on, because there was no underground music in Hollywood. Like there was raves, and then there was like Hollywood clubs, and there was like really not a lot in between. And raves weren't playing this new shit. Like they weren't playing this like hard electro stuff. They were playing like, just 10 hours of straight up house or trance or whatever. So we wanted to do this kind of Hollertronics mashup shit. And the funny thing about Steve getting into that stuff was like after he started going to Vegas, and especially after the first time he came back from Ibiza, I'll never forget this shit. He came back from Ibiza in like 07 and was like, yo, man, like I got some real shit to play you. Like what's really going on in Europe, like the real underground, real shit. He's like, these dudes, Laid Back Luke, Steve Angelo, David Guetta, Fetty Legrand. Like he's like, you don't know about this shit, bro. Like this is the real underground. I'm like, those guys are actually everything we're fighting against. I'm like, those guys are like, that's European pop music, dude. I'm like, I know about all that. And I like all that. You know what I mean? I love all that stuff. I love crossover dance records. I'm like, but that's not what we're doing here. But that became what he was doing. That's when, it's just like, if you watch the Wu-Tang documentary, if you watch like anything, like there's always a point where everyone has the same goal, and then like some time goes by, and then everyone's like, well, I'm here to do this.
Right.
So it became a thing where it was just like, I'm here to play like the most underground, newest shit I could find that no one's ever heard. Steve was there to play like the most banging anthems that he could find. Like he wanted to play like The Love Is Gone and like records like that. And then AM was always just doing AM.
Right.
Like whatever. Here's 112 songs that I like right now, all mixed into one.
I remember that early 2000s time. I think you remember, is like when house and hip hop started just converging. Obviously, it was like hip hop and rock in the late 90s and the 2000s, when like Bob Sinclair, Love Generation, World Hold On? Yeah.
World Hold On, yeah.
You started hearing those records on Hot 97, like Funkmaster Flex and
man.
DJ Enough were playing those records. And they're like, yo, I love this shit. I don't care what y'all say. I'm playing this shit.
Well, there was always, that's one of the things I loved about those 6-hour New York nights. Like when I was playing in New York, was that there was always that half hour of house. And like every year or two, one song would get added to that half hour.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's true. Yeah.
Like, I moved to 97, and like when I would go see like Stretch or Riz or any of those guys play like an urban night, as it was called, like you would have an hour of R&B remixes in the beginning, and then you would start playing the hits, and then you would have like the old school set, and then you would have like 20 minutes of reggae, and then you go back to the hits, and then somewhere around like 2:30 or 3, it would just be like some way into whatever, and then it was like Follow Me, Show Me Love, like I'll Be Your Friend, The Percolator,
Break for Love, all that shit. Yeah.
Plastic Dreams, Break for Love for sure. Depending on the hue of the crowd, like maybe even like Bizarre Inc. or like there was like a certain amount of stuff you could play, and like in '98 I saw like The Music Sounds Better With You got like
I was about to say that, yeah. Armand Van Helden, all his shit.
And then a year later, it was like Mojo Lady was added. There was like every year there was like one thing that like made like the Beatnuts like house music, you know?
Yeah,
that's crazy. That's so accurate. That's so accurate. Like that's, yo, you're a fucking New Yorker, man. The way you're breaking this whole shit down, it's crazy.
Yeah, man.
You were in New York.
The way I bonded when I met Juju, the way that we bonded was actually over the release of Kings of Tomorrow finally, which
so good.
That was another big song.
Right before I left New York, that came out in like the end of 2002 or like early 2003. I was just about to leave, and I was talking to Juju, and he's like, man, like it came on, and he's like, this is that shit. He's like, this, like, it was just anything that made you feel like that old time when house was in fact like an exciting new black music.
Yeah.
Like if you listen to like Special Ed's first album, Jungle Brothers, particularly like Queen Latifah, like everyone always had like the one house record.
Yeah.
You know, it's like what ultimately became like in the 90s or like in the late 90s, like everyone would have like that one like really soft record that you would take off your cassette version, like Noriega, like I Love My Life, or like things like that. There was just one song that just didn't fit with all the like rape and murder and like the rest of the shit. And, like,
that's so funny because even NWA went through that, where they had the record on the first Straight Outta Compton. It was like a weird EDM record towards the end, and I was like, "What is this?" Like,
it was called Something to Dance To, because like at a certain point, it was like, "All right, we killed all the cops, we sold all the drugs,
we killed all the cops." Is funny.
We killed all the cops, we sold all the drugs, we drank all the 8-ball, and like all of these suckers and busters are dead. And like now we can finally dance.
and then De La Soul like mocked all that shit, right?
I was about to say that, yeah.
And then De La Soul is dead. De La Soul is dead. They came out with they just mocked like that standard house song that every rapper put out. They would just be like making fun of that shit. And I remember that.
Yeah, but to be fair, there was also like 9 David Morales remixes of Saturday, right?
There was a bunch of them, yeah.
Yo, so I want to talk about you in New York. I'm itching to talk about you in New York, but I'm
curious to hear about this as well.
I want to talk about a little. I want to go back to Banana Split for a little bit.
Stop smiling.
I want to talk about Banana Split just because I want to break down exactly what were the roles when you, AM, and Stevie Aoki founded that shit. Like what role did each person play? Do you know what I mean?
Keeping it as 100 as I can recall.
Yes.
Chronologically, my memory is good, but I keep doing shit to like fuck it up. So like I like to think I have all of these facts right, and I hope I do. I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth. What were the roles and how did it come to be? It was like this. AM, like myself, was like a secret raver. Like he also like in the 90s had gone to a lot of raves and had like a crazy collection of old rave mixtapes and stuff. And when that music in 2005 started coming out, like Switch, A Bit Patchy, and Justice, and Uffy, and Mastercraft, he was like, I want a place. he was excited by the music.
Mm-hmm.
And one night in the wake of his kind of breaking up with Nicole Richie and becoming this kind of tabloid famous DJ guy, we went to Cinespace to check out Aoki, who was also Aoki was also hosting Saturdays at LAX. It was a night called Hot Lava Saturdays, and it was Steve Aoki and Sam Spiegel, also known as Squeaky Clean, also known as NASA. And they were doing, it was a cool, for a Saturday at LAX, like it was as cool as it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So he was doing that. And I think when AM showed up to Steve's parties in his Lacoste with his faux hawk and like with his diamonds, like girls were like, it was either like they didn't really know who he was or like they didn't care that he was there, which I don't think he loved. Because he was a man who enjoyed, attention from all angles.
I like how the inspiration for a lot of great shit is pussy in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like in his case, it's more just like, it's just you want people to give a shit,
Yeah.
And I think and we all knew, and I think he knew, as someone who grew up the way he did and had the experience he had, when he was doing that kind of Us Weekly life, like he knew that this like wasn't really what he was meant for. And so me and him were kind of talking about all this stuff and all this music. And for better or worse, as I recall it, he said the words to me, "That guy Steve Aoki, is he all right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man, he's cool as fuck." Because he was. Like, that was my dude. He was doing cool parties. He was playing forward-thinking music. Him and Frankie Chan had Tuesdays at Cinespace, which was them both playing vinyl.
Yeah.
Which neither of them ever had any business doing, but that was just how you played music back then. So it was always a sonic nightmare listening to it go from song to song, but they would play like Peaches and Block Party and like The Killers and like all that kind of like shit that was coming out in 04, 05, right. The Rapture and things like that. And that was kind of like the precursor to what we did at Banana Split, was that kind of LCD sound system and stuff like that, like the rock, like punk disco, indie disco, whatever they were calling it. And he said to me, he's like, "Is Steve Aoki a cool dude?" And I'm like, "Yeah, he's a cool dude." And then he kind of reached out to Matt, and then that was the beginning of Banana Split, which was a party that I had helped conceptualize with AM, but that I was very quickly being cut out of.
Wow.
By Matt Colin and Steve and like these guys that I had actually co-signed, who to this day are guys that are my friends, and I have nothing bad to say about it, but they are what you call smart businessmen, unlike myself. And they know that, having like a guy that really gives a shit about music and has really strong opinions, like really doesn't help anyone in Hollywood. And like, so I saw it happening, and then AM sent me this like whatever it was called, when you could like catalog your like AOL Instant Messenger conversations. And he showed me this thing. He's like, "Yo, we're coming up with a title." And I swear to God, there was like 12 motherfuckers on that fucking chat. And I'm like, "Yo, like you guys sat here and talked about names for this party for like 2 hours with like, and the Cobra Snake is involved. Like, I've never even met that guy. And you've got like, who are these names? Like, I don't even know who they are." And he's like, "Yeah, those are Steve's boys. And these are, I'm just like, I saw what was happening. Like, I saw that like my vision for this kind of cool, exciting new party was going to be, turned into like a way to market whatever,
yeah.
Whatever whoever's agenda at the time may have been. Like, I could talk more shit, but I've talked enough shit already. Anyway, the point was, I called AM. I called him straight up. I was like, "No more fucking like AOL chat and not responding." I'm like, "What's really good? Like, am I going to play at this party or what?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, what do you mean?" And I'm like, "Well, we kind of came up with this idea." And then like, you're like, "Yo, what's up with Steve? Should we get him involved?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then now you guys are just kind of like having, like, you named the party without me. I had nothing to do with that. I still have the chat. It's up on DJAMlives.com. I sent it to Kevin for a conversation we had recently about this. We did not get into this kind of detail.
Yeah. Shout to Kevin Scott, by the way. Yeah.
Big shout out to Kevin Scott for literally keeping AM alive, which is a beautiful thing. I really love going on Instagram and seeing those pictures and reading those articles. As much as I'll hit him up in the DMs to be like, yo, bro, that's not even how it went down. Like, he's the man and he's killing it. A long story, slightly longer. Basically, I called him and I was at a point where I was getting ready to quit DJing.
Right.
So it was 06. I was wifed up. I was producing a reality show. I was making good money, but the deal with the girl was kind of like, if all goes well, I'll quit DJing and we'll like buy a house and get married and have a child. And so what I said to AM, and he's like, well, yo, like, how do you, like, you know, it's already me and Steve, like, and we're going to have guests. Like, how do you even, like, how do you want to do it? Like, basically, like, it was put to me, like, you're not going to play prime time, like, ever. He's like, so what, like, why are we even talking about time? You know? And I was like, okay, counterpoint. Which one of you motherfuckers is going to be there at 10 o'clock every week?
Right.
You know, like, neither of those guys were guys that showed up when doors opened. Like Aoki was mostly a promoter who was, you know, doing concerts and was a socialite. And then AM was definitely not a show up at 10 o'clock guy.
Right.
And so, you know, he was probably going to have just different people come in and open every week. And so I said to him, there's essentially two parties in the history of my career where I would like not take no for an answer. And I was like, you guys are going to let me play. And that was Banana Split and the Do-Over. And so this was the very first case was Banana Split. And I was just like, look, man, I will be there every week at 10 o'clock. I was like, I'll help handle promotion. I'll handle MySpace stuff, whatever we got to do. I was like, I don't even want any money. I just don't. No one can tell me what to play. Because remember, like the idea that we had together a year ago was that we're going to play this new exciting music that needs the platform.
Right.
So like, let's not let that get twisted and get lost. And like, I was like, I don't care if no one's there. Like all I've done my whole career that I'm about to end is play music for other people. I want to know the feeling of playing music for myself and playing new, exciting dance music is all I really want to do. At the least I can record the sets. It was the beginning of blog times. I was like, and people can listen to them at home. You know, It was the beginning of being able to like, you know, if you missed my set, you could still live it a little bit. And that's how the roles were basically designed, was that I was to be there every week at 10 o'clock and make sure that the sound was all good and that the DJ booth was ready to go and that, you know, there weren't any weirdos hanging out in the booth for when AM got there, or there wasn't anyone that Steve didn't like. Like, it was just like, I was the opener, which I was cool with, you know, like Steve was very quickly moving up pay grades and AM was the god. And like, you know, a lot of us wouldn't have been where we were at that time without him. Like even then, like when I moved to LA from New York, he did everything for me and he didn't have to do shit. So like, I was happy to like, I wouldn't open for anybody at that time, but I would open for him. In my mind, I was not opening for Steve Aoki, although oftentimes Steve Aoki would come directly after me.
Yeah.
After I had played the first set.
Right. Would you say of the three of y'all, did you have your finger on the pulse of the music a little bit more than all the other two, than AM and Steve?
Yes, because I had more time and had been doing it since I was 15.
Right.
Like, I had been going to dance music record stores 2 or 3 times a week, spending, you know, $12.99 per record for imports, and had been going to raves and doing all this stuff, and frankly getting laid a lot less than both of those guys. And especially at that time, I was living with a girl, and so I was just at home. It was the beginning of blogs. I would just stay up. You know, I would wait. She would wake up at 6 o'clock to go to work. You know what that is? That's like when you get the bed to yourself. So if I could just stay up till 4 or 5, I could like really live. So like I would sit there and just download music all night. So like I really like, I would say that I could say unequivocally, yes, I knew what was up. And again, when it came to Steve, you're talking about someone who went to Europe and heard David Guetta and came back and was like, yo, I got that underground heat. So you're like, you know, say what you will about the man. He's not like some kind of, you know, musical Bengali. But
the thing is he's a front man. He's more than a front man, right? But he is very much.
He's a front man in the way that like Bret Michaels is a front man. Like there's some amount of talent there, but it's mostly about presence and the desire to. So I would say that that actually now that you say it like that, that's the easiest way to define our roles. We were all there for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Aoki was there to become famous. AM was there to show us that he was still cool, and I was there to play new underground dance music.
Right.
And I think that combination led to kind of a perfect night, because you could get there early, have free beer, hear some wild out shit. Then Aoki would get on and do his crazy dances and be like, Lindsay Lohan, come here, let's take a picture while I DJ and scream and jump up and down. And
right.
Like, that's what brought a lot of attention from globally to what we were doing, because you could go. It was also the first time that you could not go to a party and wake up and look at the Cobra Snake or Bronx or whoever, and you could be like, oh, this is what I missed last night, I gotta go next week. Or you made sure you went and acted as wild as possible because you needed to be in one of those pictures, because that's what was going to make you famous that week, was like looking good on Cobra Snake.
AM really, like, he really, I mean, he was kind of sucked into the fame a little bit. Like, he loved the fame, and he loved, like, kind of tapping into the Hollywood network a little.
He loved it, but not as much as he loved music and DJ.
Right.
Which can be said, I can say that, I think, with authority, because of the amount of times that I'm like, you're not going to have sex with that person. You want to go and get cheeseburgers and trade music? Like, really? Like, this girl's been sitting here for an hour. It's the most beautiful person I've ever seen. Like, really? Like, and I'm talking like post fame. You know what I mean? Like, that shit made sense. Like when he was like fat and angry.
Yeah.
But when he was like, you know, beautiful and famous, like, that was crazy. But like, he's still. Because he kind of knew it was there, and he loved it. Like, I think he liked knowing that it was on the table, and he liked that he could walk into a restaurant and that people knew who he was. But also having had the experience of being a fat crackhead for a lot of his life, he also knew that, like, that wasn't all there was. And
right.
That the way that I mean, obviously it comes across in the way he plays. Like, you can't play music the way he plays unless you really care about music. And he wasn't some kind of prodigy, like. He wasn't like a A-track who just like touches a turntable for the first time and is better than anyone in the world. And then like the rest of your life is kind of dictated by that. Like Adam worked so hard to get his fingers to do what they did. And he and it showed. And I don't think he ever forgot that. And I think that was the reason that when I called him and I was like, you motherfuckers are really about to start this party without me? Yeah. And he was like, yeah, right. I mean, and he's like, what can you say? Like, I'm like, yo, I'm going to DJ for free, bro. And I'll be there every week at 10. Like, you're really going to say no? Like, I kind of knew I had him dead to rights.
That's crazy so that's what I was kind of asking, is that, you know, when he was talking with Steve, when you co-signed Steve and they started talking about the party, and then you felt kind of ousted a little bit, or you weren't as involved at that time. Was it the Hollywood connects and all of this thing that was sucking AM in a little? Yeah,
well, there was a lot of stuff going on. There was LV, you know, who was AM's manager and his partner in Dexstar.
LV, yeah.
And then you had Matt Colin, who managed Steve, who was not a partner in Dexstar yet at that point.
But he was like the editor of like BPM magazine or some shit, right?
He was the head of marketing for BPM. Yeah. And he was the one that brought, like, when I say that, like, Lady Gaga was like the first payola gig we had, like, that was the first time, like, that there was just like, look, like, this is who's playing this week and we're not voting on it. And like, this is what's happening, which is funny because if you look at the flyer for that night, Steve and AM weren't even there. It's me, Cobra Crames, and Lady Gaga. Wow. I don't know if you guys know who Cobra Crames is, but he's like a very deep underground New York, like Brooklyn DJ who plays like really wild shit. Who's the man? But it's crazy to think that was like one of her first LA gigs. It's like with me and this guy. But it was like no one had anything to gain for their career by having me there other than me. Mm-hmm. So, like, I think one of the reasons that AM asked me, yo, is this guy Steve cool, is because Matt Colin was in his ear a lot, like, yo, you and Steve, you know, like, Steve does Saturdays at LAX. You guys should do something together. You guys should DJ together. Like, he knew that a co-sign from AM was worth more than anything money could buy, like, in the DJ at that time.
Well, it definitely, outside of LA, it solidified.
We're pretty fucking good for all, for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, like outside of LA, the Banana Split and the AM Party, you know, with Steve kind of like solidified Steve as an actual DJ. You know, like you're like, wow, he's.
It was very, very important for him to have that because it was, you know, it was like a classic thing. Like there's any number. I mean, you guys work in that world. There's any number. It's like I said earlier. Like he was the one that he didn't know the difference between a good DJ and a bad DJ and underground. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, he loved Mastercraft when he started the party, but then a year later, it turned out he couldn't tell the difference between Mastercraft and David Guetta. You know, and like in the same way that like he didn't know the difference between a good DJ or a bad DJ. He knew whether or not it was something that people liked and might help make him famous. For the same reason that he would get super amped when Frankie Muniz would show up to Banana Split, and I would be like, "Oh, there goes the neighborhood."
Frankie Muniz is crazy.
Yes. So wait, you never got paid for opening?
And Matt Colin would run into the booth and tell us who was there. You know what I mean? So like if he came up and was like, yeah, man, you know, like Zombie Nation is here. I was like, oh, that's dope. And then when he would run in and be like, yeah, you know, Frankie Muniz is here. Like, so why are you telling me that? Knock him in the middle.
Wait. So
show was big at the time.
Show was exactly. I'm like, how does that help our underground dance music agenda? This is a detriment.
Yeah, it's crazy because Mike B reacts to shit that every like kind of DJ reacts to, right? Like we don't really care about actors and all of that shit in the end, you know? And I feel like
guys, right?
Yeah. We like I don't care about celebrities. If anything, I'm like, all right, what do they want now? Like, why are you telling me? What do they want? You know, they obviously want something and you want us to play something for them or something like that, you know? But
I can only imagine the shit you guys as Vegas residents have had to hear. I mean, in the short-lived time that Dre's was in LA and I was a resident. Oh man. I mean, like, I think my favorite one I ever heard was Jean-Claude Van Damme is here and he wants to pop bottles to trains. And I was like,
that's incredible. That's a really incredible statement.
Literally, my response to the VIP host was, "Is that a question? Like, is there a question mark at the end of that? Like, because that to me is just a sentence. I was like, it's one of the coolest sentences I've ever heard. But there's definitely like nothing I can do to put. Like, if you're looking for a response from me to that, other than that's really neat that you said that. Like, there's nothing I can do for that man right now.
I really hated. I hated like all the like the what was it like the OC reality shows, and then all of these like reality,
The Hills and all those shows,
all that shit, and then they would come host parties in Vegas, and I was just like, what the fuck is like what is this?
So much more money than we were.
It was
a lot more.
Like, to host those parties, like it was like they would really like they were getting like $50,000 to like do walkthroughs and like.
I hated that. Yeah. I hated that whole era of like Pete Wentz DJing with iPods at like in a 1,500 capacity nightclub.
Is that era over? Can I come back out of the house? I don't know. In the beginning of quarantine, I feel like a lot of that was still going on. It's just that they were doing it for free now.
Oh man. well, I want to talk. So you never got paid from Banana?
Shows up to DJ everywhere for free, right? Like, oh, the guy from Arcade Fire's here. He's gonna fucking DJ. Whatever. Let's go.
So wait, you never got paid from Banana Split for opening?
I ultimately did. It was like it came down. It came down one day in the email because like the club was making money, and there was definitely like, you know, like Matt would come to the booth with some amount of cash usually at the end of the night and like put a little something in Steve's pocket, put a little something in AM's pocket, put a little something in his own pocket, and I would be like, I got pockets too, dog. Like, what's good, you know?
Yeah.
And then especially about a year into it, when those dudes started like really being on tour. You know, like, because there started being nights where I was like holding it down.
Yeah.
And I would play from 11 to, or I would play from 10 to 12, and then we'd have a guest from 12 to 1, and then I'd close it out. Mm-hmm. And it just started becoming and it was like, I never asked because like I had already said like, I'm gonna do this for free. So I knew I should be getting money, but I never asked. And AM being the man that he is, just 1 week in the email was, you know, by the way, so-and-so is playing on this day. And like, we need to tell that security guard to like, stop touching people's butts. And like, by the way, like we need to give Mike B like $500 every week. He's been holding it down for a year, like.
So you didn't get paid till a year in?
About a year in, yeah.
Wow. Can we have all the youth listen to that? Like that is dedication and sacrifice
No
and
youth
love.
wants to hear that.
But that was also after many years of being that fucking guy. Like, DJing was not a unified front the way it is now. You know what I mean? Like, I think, especially in the wake of Banana Split and all that, we all realized that being friends with each other and not hating on other DJs and maybe playing and sharing nights was like a good thing for everybody.
Right.
Because definitely came from the era of like, I only have 6 hours, dude. So like, you know, you can't come and play a half hour with me. Like, I have my whole shit. So like 10 to 4 is spoken for. Like, I know exactly what I'm doing. You could play one song and fuck up my whole night with your shit.
See, I think the opposite. I think there was a unity in the early 2000s or in the 2000s because, like, I remember having homies. Huh?
I was the quickest one to hate on, like, because promoters would be like, yeah, yo, we want to have, you know, Green Lantern come in, or we want to have DJ Muggs come in, or he's gonna come in and play an hour. It's a good look for the party. And I was like, I'm not a fucking opening DJ, bro. Like, you know, like and you're not giving me less money because I'm playing less. Like, it was just always like, it was all, you know, it was also just repetition of things. When you're 20 years old and you're playing in nightclubs, you don't know shit, but you see what like the older heads that are, you know, a few grades above you are saying to promoters, and then you start saying that shit.
Right.
So, you know, I opened for a lot of like angry, crazy motherfuckers, and I would hear them say a lot of angry, crazy shit, and I was like, all right, that's how you get your money.
Yeah. You'd
be like, fuck you, I'm the best, I'm the man, you need to pay me more. So like, I grew up and started saying that shit to people.
See, I saw that shit, and I'm sure never saw that, and I was like, I never want to be like that. I was like, yo, I don't want to be that dude.
A long time to learn that it wasn't that guy. I mean, when I was playing in New York, I mean, here's a smooth transition into the New York years for you.
Yeah.
Like, when I was leaving there, I had been playing the basement of Cheetahs for about 3 years. And there was literally dudes that were coming up to me like, yo, so when are you moving to LA? Like,
he was waiting to take your spot.
Yeah.
Wow.
I haven't seen this dude in years. Eric LaPoe.
Yeah.
Oh!
I'll never forget. I ran into him at A1. And he's like, how you doing? I was like, I'm good. He's like, look, man, you know, like, the promoters at Cheetah have been telling me that, like, you're gonna move back to LA and I can have the basement for like a month. Like, and you're still like, you're here record shopping. Like, are you leaving? Or like, what? Man. Also, there wasn't that many gigs. You know, like there was maybe, you know, 20 people that could do what we did, and then there was maybe 10 places you could do it. So
Eric LaPoe, shout out to Eric LaPoe though. I mean, he was nasty though.
He's a listener of the podcast, by the way. Shout out to Eric LaPoe.
Shout out to Eric LaPoe. Yo, Eric LaPoe is ill, honestly.
Yeah, he's nasty.
I mean, I haven't heard him DJ in 15 years, but I used to love him.
Yeah, me neither. It's been a while since I heard him. Yeah. All right, so let's get it. I want to get into New York. You're a New Yorker to me, right? So
hold on. I got a question, Kirk, about before we leave Banana Split.
Yeah.
Ultimately, Mike, when AM passed, the last Banana Split was in November of that year, which was 11 years ago.
Yes.
Why did it just because of his death you guys stopped it, or what was it? The ultimately.
Well, it's like I said, everything that had to do with what went on at Banana Split, once I had let those motherfuckers know that they couldn't be having chats without me, was a unanimous decision between the four of us. And it was as simple as, after a few days went by and it was like Sunday, it was like, we're obviously not opening that first Sunday. And then I think that like Monday came about, and I want to say it was Matt who said it. And he was just like, so like, we're just like, this is just, we don't do this anymore. Right. And Steve and I both agreed that, yeah, like this is like, you don't, like, this is how this ends. Like, none of us wanted it to be over.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Steve and I crying together and having like a very real moment and kind of having hindsight on the party. I mean, it had only been, you know, we had done the last one maybe 2 weeks ago, but also Steve hadn't been there a lot in the last year. And I don't think he had a lot of times, like, until something ends, whether it be someone's life or a party, you don't really have that, you're just in it and you're just going and you're doing it. And I remember there was a moment where Steve and I were talking to each other, like right before AM's memorial. And he just turned to me and he kind of put his arm around me and he was like, fucking banana split, dude. And I was like, yeah, man, fucking banana split. And he's like, we might have changed the world with that shit. And I'm like, we definitely changed the world with that shit. And we just started crying and like it was like we just knew it. Like we knew that it was never gonna be the same for any of us, for better or worse. And that's just how it ended. And we did the last one. I keep looking up because I have the poster for that up here, and it's signed by everyone who played that night, which was like Z-Trip, A-Track, Cut Chemist, Justice. Was like we basically had everyone sign in and play because it was just like, well, we can't not like we owe it to our people. You know what I mean? Like we had after three full years of doing the party, there were so many family members of the party. Like it was almost like, I mean, that was church for a lot of people, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so we knew it was over, but we knew we had to do, in addition to all the tributes that we did to AM, we had to do a tribute to Banana Split. And unfortunately, part of it was that it was still going to be small and we weren't going to do it in a large venue. And there was maybe 500 people that didn't get in that night. I went outside once to get an old friend in. And like I stood out there and Danny, the door man, just turned to me and just shook his head. And I just looked out and it was just silence because people aren't going to talk shit. Like people aren't going to be, I got to get in. Cause they know it's like a slightly somber occasion. And it was the most quiet 500 people outside of a Hollywood club I've ever seen. And I remember being like, man, that's really sad. And I was just like, I said to Danny, I was like, you know who's who, who deserves to be in there more than others, unfortunately. And I was like, please make this happen the best you can. But alternately, it's probably better, like, if you just come inside for a half hour and let this die. Like,
right.
And that was that night. And it was a crazy night. There's some great pictures of that night. And then I think that was important also because I think Steve needed to become who he was going to become. And I needed to become who I was going to become. And it was like, I think keeping that party going would have been, you know what I mean? It would have been the Hangover Part 2 and 3. Well, at least they were all in those. I don't know.
Well, what do you think would have happened?
They didn't have the ingredient, huh?
What do you think would have happened? How do you think the party would have evolved?
It just wasn't like it would have been like having a party that DJ AM was a resident at, except now he wasn't there anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean? You have a weekly party where the best DJ in the world is playing there at least once or twice a month. And then like you've got me and Steve Aoki, but also Steve is like doing what he's doing. And like you've got me and like, what am I going to just be in there fucking crying every week? Like remembering how shit used to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's maybe like every couple years, there's an email where someone brings up the idea of doing something. You know, we were going to do something for the 10-year anniversary of his passing last year. I talked about in 2016 doing something for the 10-year anniversary of Banana Split because Halloween 2006 was when it started, a party that I was not invited to.
Wow.
And I literally was not at the first one. Like they did it without telling me.
That's crazy.
That was when I made the call the next week. That was, it's just, the answer to the question is as simple as like AM had died and it was really at the heart of the party. We were all there for our different reasons, but like more than any of us, like he was there because he was in charge and he loved it. And it was all of our party, but like, that was really AM's party. Like he was the lifeblood of that party. And when he passed, I think it was it took us one round of emails to decide that it was over. Like, I don't think there was not much of a question about whether or not that should go on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And did you guys want to ever do an anniversary? Like,
yes and no. It's like it's been brought up a lot of times, and there's a lot of rounds of email and different ideas and different people we try to get involved. And it's usually either a combination of Steve's schedule, what is the right place to do it at,
right,
you know, like what is the venue? Like what is it even right now? Because they have like genre things. They did like a Dim Max in a Space reunion, and they have like Blog House memory nights and things like that. But it's like, what is a Banana Split reunion? Like, I think the final Banana Split was literally like, if you look at the flyer for it, it says the final Banana Split. So like, I feel like that's why we don't do it, because it's like we did the last one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like you can't keep having farewell tours when like the front man dies. Like you gotta just kind of
Right.
I do a lot of you know, as soon as the stream started, like my second or third one was like, I'm gonna do Banana Split music. Like I still will constantly pay homage to it. I love talking about it. Like kids hit me up in DMs all the time just with questions about what it was like. I love to talk about it because I feel like it keeps the memory alive. It keeps AM alive.
Yeah.
But in terms of doing the party, the pressure of having it even come close to the magic that it was when it was real, like, is too much. Like, it's, how do you do it? You know what I mean? How do you do it and not even if it's great, is it going to be better or even as good? You know, probably not.
It's crazy because you mentioned like playing a set.
I want to do a fucking AM hologram or some shit that. Like,
no.
don't do that.
I learned anything from being on mushrooms at Coachella and watching Tupac is that nobody wants that.
Yeah. But I think it's funny that you said you streamed. You were on live stream and you played a Banana Split set. But it's funny how the music is so tied into that party from that era. Even Fashion, played a Banana Split set on his Twitch stream. Yep. And I just forgot a lot of these songs. And I'm like, wow, it's so crazy how this musical movement was represented by this one party so strongly. You know what I mean?
And I think there were so many specific memories for people with specific songs. Because definitely for the first year, there wasn't... It's like any genre when it's new, like when there's like... Anytime there's like less than 100 or like 50 songs of something, like that's when you can say that like you like a genre. Like electro house was dope when there was only like 8 people doing it and there was only like 50 songs, and every week it would be like, well, if this guy didn't play it, then I get to play it, and there was only a certain, so that you get those specific memories. Like in this, like remember when trap was new and like every single thing that you heard was the illest, and like you couldn't wait to play it, and you could just drop it because you knew that after the clap build-ups and the bass hits that everyone's going to go crazy. It was the same way, I think, with the Banana Split songs. Like there was just a certain time where like it wasn't, people didn't even know who the artists were or what the songs were. They just knew that it was a sound that they couldn't wait to hear, and it was new and exciting.
Yeah. And
I think for DJs like Fashion, who was kind of our unofficial resident, and a lot of other people, there are a lot of songs that maybe they didn't get to play at that time, or that like, there were definitely songs in that first year that like I was not allowed to play because Adam or AM was playing it. It wasn't until like when they started not being there at 11:30, I was just like, it's my fucking time to shine, baby. I'm gonna play all that shit. Let's go. And there's definitely, there's like 30 or 40 songs I think that would be considered like, the tunnel bangers of Banana Split. Split.
That's crazy. It's such a. I remember that era so well because even when I would see motherfuckers from LA, they would visit Vegas. Like the big thing back then was trading music, like coming to my crib, trading MP3s and shit like that. And I was always like hitting them up and like, yo, what are y'all playing in Banana Split? Y'all playing this? What's the new shit y'all playing in Banana Split right now? I would always ask them because I'd want to be like one of the first DJs in Vegas playing that LA shit. You know what I mean?
I remember those times. I think about that a lot because I'm very like, now people will hit me up for one thing. And like, I still try to be like the DJ Clue of everything. You know what I mean? So I'm always just like, you can't have this, or like, like, I still want, like, if I have an exclusive, I still get really excited. But at that time, it was real magical. And AM was the one who set that off, man. Like, that was his way. He wanted everyone to get on Serato because he wanted clubs to have Serato, and he knew that it was the future. And his whole deal was like, look, man, you buy Serato, and I will give you my whole library. And he did that for maybe like 20 of us. Like, he definitely did that for Stone. Stone was a holdout I feel like Stone didn't have Serato till like 06, maybe like 07.
Wow.
And like and there was and then that became a thing where it was like you would get Serato and you would get like your AM kit. So you had all your basic shit. You had like your Be Faithful and your 50 Cent shit and your Party Breaks and all that kind of stuff. And then eventually you wanted to you had to like kind of have your own style, like the same way you would have certain white label records and stuff before. So you would start ripping your shit so that you could still play your vinyl set, but then other people would have heat and other people were coming in from out of town because as you recall, Serato also made it so we could all get around a lot easier.
Right.
We were much more likely to fly to another city and play without bringing 6 metal crates. Mm-hmm. So like you would go and like that. It was also a way of becoming best friends with people that you didn't really know because you had something to talk about. Because, you know, like sometimes like, oh, you're in town, let's get lunch. Like sometimes like a date is weird or like a, you know what I mean? Like what is there? But like, I could definitely say like Fashion and I, like, that's how we became friends. Like, it was just like, yo man, like I fuck with you, you fuck with me. Like, let's sit in a room and fucking just like give each other's laptops and a fucking hard drive and just, you know, just have at it. And it was like that, I think, with a lot of people. And there were a lot of people that I probably haven't met to this day who I spent hours online with, sending files back and forth and trading music, which was cute. And then I feel like a few years ago I had like a full inverse reaction to it. I was just like, it's enough. Like, I've shared enough shit with the world. Like, everyone has everything. And plus people were like, don't worry, man, I'm not going to give this shit to anyone. And I can speak for myself included. Like, I gave it to everybody because I needed to get their shit too.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, yo, fucking, you know, AM gave me this. He said it can't give it to anyone. But like, you really don't give it to anyone. All right.
Do you feel like you know, you're obviously from LA, you spent a little time in New York. That time in New York, do you feel like it really shaped your taste in music and your style in DJing?
1,000%. I was technically a DJ when I moved to New York, as in I had tables and a record collection. But like, I mean, I practically didn't know what the fucking headphones were for. You know what I mean? Like, I just knew that it was part of. That's how people knew you were a DJ, if you walked around with headphones. But like, I'd never been in a real nightclub. I had seen only rave DJs and heard like 4-track mixtapes. And I would wonder how they did that. Like, because in my mind, people were doing those 4-track mixes on 2 turntables. Like, how do they have 2 instrumentals and a cappella and they're cutting over it? Like, I don't.
Right.
I have to work so much harder to learn how to do this because I don't know how they're doing it. And I thought that house DJs were making live music while they were DJing. You know, like, I'm on acid, like, watching these guys when you're 16. Everyone's treating them like they're the Rolling Stones in concert. I'm like, surely they're not just playing a song and then another song, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to explain like mixing and blending and timing and when you let something hit and learning a record before you play it and how to like shape a night. Like, these are all things that are impossible to explain to anybody, which is why I always tell people, like, I can't teach you how to DJ.
Right.
I get a lot of requests and offers, and I've been made some very handsome offers, you know, financially to like teach someone how to play. And I'm like, look, I'll be honest with you. I can't teach you anything. I'm like, the best thing you could do is have someone that likes you enough to let you play in their club for like a year while you suck. And like, that's how you learn how to DJ.
Yeah.
Like, playing in New York clubs because either a promoter liked me enough or Stretch would let me open for him or whatever it was just how you learned. Like, you didn't learn how to play right until you really fucked it up. And then you would have to, like, you know, you would play the wrong song at the wrong time or press the wrong button or put the needle in the wrong place or let the song run out, or you didn't know that in the middle of party and bullshit there's, you know, the music stops and there's fighting sounds, or you know, like, whatever it was. Like, you would learn that shit the hard way, or like, you know, realize that something was only 40 seconds long, whatever it was. And it wasn't until you were sitting there with like 300 people booing you or like throwing beer bottles at you or whatever that you're like, man, I need to never do that shit again, and I need to sit at home and figure out my set and figure out, and like, I need to listen to songs before I play them. And I think there's so. I mean, you guys know there's so much that goes into it.
Yeah.
I think now you can teach. I mean, you can teach people how to DJ in the same way you could teach someone Photoshop. Like you could show them how a program works, but you can't teach them how to be like the illest graphic designer. You know. Like I think the playing field's a little bit more even because back then you didn't have to be a great DJ if you still had the records.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you could still be like a Samantha Ronson or a Steve Aoki or whoever. Because like
Jesus Christ.
You weren't like the illest, but like you had the same records that like Stretch or Mark or AM or whoever had. You know what I mean? Like Steve Aoki had the same vinyl as all of us. People didn't care whether or not he was like doing the illest shit with it because like when you heard "Be Faithful," you got hype like whether it came in on the one or not, you know. So,
what brought you to New York though? I kind of want to. I want to know what brought you to New York.
I moved to New York in 1997 to go to NYU.
Got it.
To go to film school, and a couple years or about. In the beginning of my sophomore year, I was introduced to Stretch.
How did that happen? Because I grew up in New York and I was never able to meet Stretch like ever.
Right? Yeah, it was crazy. My ex brother-in-law like worked in music and knew Stretch and had in some way like he was kind of like he wasn't like officially his manager, but he was kind of like. He helped him get a deal with Sony. And I kept telling him, I'm like, man, that's so cool. You know, Stretch Armstrong, like next time you're in New York, you got to let me know. You got to let me know. And I got a call one night and I was like out like partying with my college bros. I remember like, I was fucked up and it was like a Saturday night at like 11 PM. And all of a sudden I got a call from my brother-in-law that was like, yo, I'm at this club. We're at a bar right now in the East Village with Stretch. And like, I told him about you and we just did our deal with Sony and like, maybe like you could be his intern. Like, I don't know, but like come down and meet Stretch. And I guess it was probably a good thing that I was like a little faded. Cause like I showed up and I was kind of loose, you know, like, and I was definitely 19, like, you know, I probably hadn't done laundry in like 3 months, you know, like it was like college life. Like I still don't know how I was even allowed to walk into that bar or sit at the table that I was sitting at. Because that night, that table, I'll never forget like the people that were at that table. It was Stretch, Mighty My, Paul Rosenberg.
Wow.
And Reef.
Holy shit.
And John Sheck.
And Sheck?
And Jackie Green.
Wow.
And I met them all at the same time. I remember
that's insane, Mike. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And a lot of things happened at that table that night. Like Shecky had the first like he didn't have the record, but he had the sleeve for Bad Meets Evil.
With Eminem and Royce the 5'9", yeah.
And he was showing it to Paul and being like, this is what's gonna come out. And then they said I think this was one of the things that got me in with them was they were like, yo, like, have you heard this guy Eminem? Like, this is going to be his next. I was like, what? That's the next thing. Like, yo, I've been waiting for this guy's album because he had been one of the first shows I went to in New York. Like, being in New York, I was real excited to like see New York shit. Like, all I wanted to do was go find out where like Brand Nubian and the Cocoa Brothers were and like go see that shit. And so the Cocoa Brothers were hosting. Coco Brovaz were hosting well, let's call them Smith and Wesson.
Yeah.
This is before the album came out, so we were still a little bit excited about the Cocoa Brothers. They were hosting an open mic night at Wetlands, and I went down there, and like the Outsiders were like the headliners, and they started calling out. They were like, "Yo, Eminem, where's Eminem? Eminem to the stage! Eminem to the stage!" And Eminem came up, and he was white, and which was shocking because there weren't a lot of white people in the club, and it had been like a 5-minute delay of him to get to the stage, and people were loudly booing him.
Wow.
Just like that's who we're waiting for, this fucking guy. And like he got mad heated and he did some straight up 8 Mile shit where he like grabbed the mic a cappella, you know, and he was just like, oh, you don't like me and I don't like D and like just fucking destroyed. And like everyone was just like, ah, and I was like, oh my God, who the fuck is that guy? Eminem. And then that name stayed in my head. And then I saw him in Unsigned Hype a few months later.
Yeah.
And then at Smoke and Grooves tour that year, in the Fuji set, like in the middle of the set, Wyclef was like, y'all want to hear this shit we've been listening to on the tour bus all year? And like they played My Name Is, and I'll never forget like hearing just the first bar of that coming in and fucking, hi kids, do you like that? And I was just like, oh my God, that's my fucking dude. And like, and then Jazzy Jeff had Just the Two of Us on his mixtape on the Vibe I'm On.
Mm-hmm.
Like that whole mix is all him cutting up crazy, and then he just goes, and now I'm gonna play some new shit. And it's like this mushy demo version of Just the Two of Us. Like that's how ill Eminem was. That like everyone, like the Fugees were stopping their show to play this song. And Jazzy Jeff in the middle of his mixtape was like, it's the only thing that he was playing not on vinyl on that shit. Like we all agreed that this guy was like real special.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm sitting at this thing, and then and this guy pulls out this record. I'm like, this looks like a couple of porn stars. Like, what does this have to do with Eminem?
All right.
And he's like, and then he turned to the back, and he's like, yeah, this is Eminem, and then this is Royce. And I was like, yeah, Royce, he's the other guy that's on that. You know, they had the song Bad Meets Evil on the demo, and I had the demo tape thing. Like I had broken my ass to like be on Canal Street and somehow get that original version of the Slim Shady LP. And like that was really, I think that's how I won over all those guys. Was like, not only did I know who Eminem was so that night would have been like October or November of like 1998. So 22 years ago. And like I walked up to them and like I knew who Eminem was. And what's it called? Slim Shady LP came out, I want to say like February or March of 99. And like My Name Is was like just about to drop. And so the fact that, and like, so like I was able to like in a very quick couple of minutes, like show them that I was up on new shit and that I really cared about music and that so I think I was able to impress all of those guys very quickly because they were just, when I think back on it, I'd never really know why they were all so cool to me because I must have looked, I mean, when I see pictures of myself from that time, like I look like a mess. Like I'm just a mess. Like it's like I couldn't grow a beard. I've got like the half mutton chops. Like I'm never gonna shave this shit. You know what I mean? Like I hadn't shaved in my life. Like it just whatever was there, and some giant cargo pants and a dirty ass shirt and like a very sweat covered backwards fitted hat. And,
that sounds like what I used to wear pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, what we all wore, but you know, I mean, like when we didn't have to, you know, I was 18. I wasn't getting into nightclubs. I wasn't like getting dressed up for anyone. It was, and that's how I met Stretch. Basically I met all those guys at the same time, and I think my comments about knowing who Eminem was and an excitement about this Bad Meets Evil thing, caught their ear. And then as the night went on, like Stretch and I just started talking to each other about like hip hop and stuff because Mighty My was at the table too, and I started saying, you know, like, oh yeah, man, like the High and Mighty, like I love the B-Boy document, like I just bought that 12 at Fat Beats, and like this is like pre B-Boy document 99, like just the original first B-Boy document, and like so I just think that I was up on stuff enough that like I had a lot to learn, but that it wasn't like Stretch was gonna have to like teach me all about music. Like I knew about Fat Beats, I knew about the High and Mighty, I knew about Eminem. Like I knew enough that there was something for him to work with there. Yeah. And like literally the next day, my brother-in-law called me and was like, "Hey man, Stretch really liked you, and like we're opening the offices in a couple weeks, and he wants you to start coming down there, and just basically 2 or 3 times a week, whenever you don't have classes or whenever you have some time, and he's gonna come up with some shit for you to do." And then I went down there maybe like 4 or 5 times before he actually showed up to meet me there, which was how I got to know Sheck, because him and Sheck shared an office. And so I would come down there and Shecky Green would be like, "Hey, I remember you. You're the guy that knows who Eminem is." He'd be like, what the fuck are you doing here? Like, well, I'm Stretch's new intern. I'm waiting for him to come here. He's like, yeah, you're going to be waiting a long time. He's like, you want to smoke weed? You want to listen to some demos? And like, that was the beginning of game. So like, and Sheck was just like, yeah, do you smoke weed? And I said, yes. He's like, cool. Do you have some? And I was like, yes. And so, and that became a very important. I learned very quickly
to always have weed on you.
Being the guy who had a pocket full of weed could go very far in the rap industry. And I was also from LA, so like, not only did I had weed, I had like weed the likes of which like motherfuckers in New York had never seen.
Really?
Yeah, the OG.
Yeah, well, because like they had like, you know, there was only like a few kinds of weed available. There was just like the regular shit,
the chocolate tie.
Yeah, that's it.
Like, that's even a thing. And then you had like the weird uptown, like you had the Pude, which was like the beat nuts and those guys smoked, but I feel like that shit had dust in it. And then like there was the good weed, which was the delivery weed, which was you got like 1.5 grams for $50.
Wow.
And this is like 98. So adjust for inflation, you know, that's like $117 gram of weed.
A lot for a fucking 1.5 grams.
Yeah, right. And so I would have like a half ounce in my pocket all the time. So Sheck learned that very quickly. And Sheck was a poker player. Sheck taught me that like you can't lie to professional poker players, which was weird. Because there were times where he would come in and he would say, do you have any weed? And I would say, no, I don't. And then he would look at his boy and he'd be like, it's in the inside pocket of his jacket.
Wow.
How the fuck do you know that? And he's like, well, it took you a second to answer and your eyes darted that way for it's like he taught me about like tells and hold 'em and like shit like that. And I was like, oh man, I really got to think twice before I like go around lying to people, I guess now.
Oh,
wow.
That's crazy.
Well, because also at a certain point, once you like, it was cool to have a half ounce, you know, but then after a while, when it became known, when like all the rappers just knew it was there, like, you know, I was an intern, like that shit got real expensive.
So Stretch's record label was Spin Inc., right?
It was called Spit Inc.
Yeah.
And so not much. This was how me and Stretch became friends, really, was like, I was always basically, but the first time Stretch came into the office, it became a thing of like, yo, here's like 10 years of Stretch and Bobbito DAT recordings. And I need you to just listen to these and just start writing down what they are. That was like one of my first jobs.
Oh, wow.
And which I was like, this is amazing. Like I get to do this. So that was cool. And then I graduated to opening promos, which was even cooler. You know, and I would be like, hey man, you got 8 copies of this. Like, can I take 2 of them? And he'd be like, no, we need 8. So then on the low, I took some.
Yeah.
And then it just became a thing. Like Spit was the deal that he had done with Sony. So we signed a couple artists, we recorded a fair amount of music. Nothing really ever came of it. But I think the more important stuff that happened to me during that time was my relationship with Shecky and the kind of like uncle / like cool older brother vibe that he took on in my life. Because I think he was kind enough to see like a young man with no game and some amount of potential who was not the worst guy. and he would just and he was very quick to be like, don't say shit like that. Or like when people like this are in the room, like don't talk about this, or like, it's not cool to like, he taught me a lot about like, just because you have information doesn't mean you need to go around telling everyone about it. Or like, just because you feel a certain way about something doesn't mean it's like always time for you to give your opinion.
Right.
And he also taught me that sometimes it was not time for me to be there. You know, like he would be like, we'd be all hanging out all day and then we would all be in the back smoking weed and listening to rap and whatever. And then he'd be like, cool, yo, let's go to Shine. You know, so-and-so's DJing and Eminem and Cypress Hill are there. And I'd be like, yeah, bet. And he'd be like, no. He's like, not you. Like, not yet. He's like, one day you'll get a call to come meet us at Shine. And like, you know, you'll know when the time
It's funny.
And he was right. Like one day he called me straight up and was like, "Yo, I'm with Cypress Hill at Shine. Like, come meet us. Like, you're ready. You're ready." He's like, and bring weed.
And bring weed.
Bring weed. Bring weed to be real. That
Ultimately,
the biggest.
It was one of the best. I mean, still to date. I mean, I smoked weed with Be Real as recently as like a year ago or something like that. It's still the coolest thing.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Imagine,
sure.
man.
There's nothing better. It was cool when I was 19, and it's cool when I was 40. It's fucking Be Real, dude.
Shecky also introduced you to AM in New York, right?
Shecky did introduce me to AM
Yeah.
in that office. Well, that's what I meant by like the working for Stretch part was light. Like out of a 5-day work week, there was maybe like a day and a half where I was working.
Yeah.
Because also like he would be DJing at night, so he wouldn't be in the office. Like he would come into the office at like kind of 4:00 to go through his records, and then go to the studio maybe and be like, yo, make a list of things we have to do. But the workflow wasn't heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And then the game part of the office, there was always shit going on because Shecky was putting out a record like every month,
Right.
and he was the rappers come through, and he was always having people come through the office. And AM was one of the many people that came through the office. He was there. He was in New York touring with Crazy Town.
Wow. Yeah.
And he said to me, he said, "Hey, do you know this guy, AMG, I believe was his name at the time." He said, "Do you know this guy, AMG?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "Yeah, his name is Adam Goldstein, and he's from Beverly Hills, and he's from da-da-da." And then it turned out that people I knew had like been his kind of like, basically my oldest brother had once, I don't think I've ever really said this in public before. It turned out that my oldest brother had kicked AM's ass like in like 1991 or something for like spray painting in his bathroom.
Wow.
like AM like got up on my brother's bathroom wall at a party and it got his ass beat by, but it was like this weird thing where we made all these connections and he was like, "Oh shit, like you're so and so's brother?" Like, yeah, he kicked my ass like when I was young and all kind of weird stuff. Like, score stuff like weed from this other guy, and like there was just these weird connections, and we knew a lot of people. And then there was a Shecky's friend, DJ Kid Swift, who's like a bit of a Philly legend, was working in the back a lot and was kind of in charge of the DJ equipment that was back there. And he was back there cutting, and AM was like, "Yeah, let me cut with you." And these guys started going back and forth, and it was like crazy because Kid Swift is like Shek's age, so he was a guy who had come up with Jazzy Jeff and stuff,
Yeah.
and really was there for like the invention of certain cuts and things like that. And I remember him being like, "Yo, this guy is like really ill." I mean, people would come back there and practice all the time, but there was something like, I mean, we've all seen AM play, but like there was something about a guy who looked and sounded and acted the way he did, which was not like a battle DJ, because he wasn't a battle DJ. Like he would battle people, but he didn't fit the description of a battle DJ.
Yeah.
Like, some kind of rock star, you know what I mean? Like, because he was Crazy Town's DJ, and he came in, he had purple hair with like kind of a mohawk thing, and like maybe some amount of glitter on his shirt or something, like shit wasn't like, he wasn't like one of us, but he was so ill with the cuts. And it was in that back room at Game, in the same place that I heard these blase demos, or like talk to Thurston Howell for the first time, or like a lot of real crazy, like life transforming moments happened for me in that back conference room of Game.
Wow.
Which was what Shek wanted it to be. Like he always wanted it to be like, he had like the turntables back there. He had bongs and rolling papers and ashtrays everywhere. And he had a little bar that would roll out with Henny. And you know what I mean? Like he always wanted to make it a space where like you could just because he could put people back there and not be there too. Like it was a thing where he's like, this guy's in town, so he's going to come down. But like I have meetings. So like, you and Swift and AM go hang out in the back and do whatever. Like I'm gonna go do my shit, and then it would turn into like a cutting session, and then other like maybe like Blase would show up and start smoking weed and rapping along to them, like cutting, and like just wild shit would happen back there. Like I met A-Track and Chromeo back there, like before Chromeo was Chromeo. Like they came in as Obscure Disorder to play me their demos for Stretch. A friend of mine from Montreal. And I remember A-Track was like 16 with his video camera, and he was so mad that Stretch didn't show up. And and I felt it because I was like, Stretch is coming to meet us. Like, wait, like don't play me the demo. Like Stretch is on his way, and like he never showed up. And they're like, who is this fucking guy? And I sat, but like those are my boys to this day. Like I put out stuff on Fool's Gold. I play for Chromeo whenever they're in LA. And that was all through Game. Like that was weirdly all through Stretch allowing me into that space, and Sheck kind of seeing me wasting my time, like waiting for Stretch to tell me what to do.
Right.
Like all these amazing things would happen back there. Like I got to meet kind of one by one, like all my favorite rappers and producers from like Royal Flush and Tragedy, MC Search, Greg Nice, Nature. Like all these, like that's how I have all these drops and like all this stuff. Like I have all these things that I still use on mixtapes to this day, and it's literally all things that I got in like 1 year of my life, like 20 years ago.
That's so crazy.
Just from being in that room.
Were you like hands on or even involved with the game stuff with the Grand Theft Auto 3 game or no?
I was actually my very first credit on any record is on the Grand Theft Auto 3 track. I mixed. I was the recording engineer for the song "Spit Game," which was Royce the 5'9" and Pretty Ugly. Pretty Ugly was the artist who was signed to Spit, who was a rapper from Philly, and then Royce was signed to Game, and then uncredited. Fun fact about that record: uncredited, Hook by Khalees.
Wow.
Because she wasn't supposed to be hanging around Royce, I guess. What's funny is if you listen to the hook of that song, it's her going la 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 la. She's doing like a la 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 la. Like it's literally the same shit she does on Milkshake like 3 years later.
Wow.
Oh shit.
Uncredited. It's like, mommy, don't you play my game? La 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 la. La 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 la. Like it's the same la las as on Milkshake, and I recorded that, and that was and I remember thinking like this is my chance to get a credit, and I kept telling Shecky when he was doing the artwork, I was like don't fuck me over on this, because I had recorded. I did some stuff for Milo and Eric when they were doing the second High and Mighty EP, and I did it all for free, and I remember I told them I was like, I'll do this all for free, but like. The next logical step, now that I've smoked weed with all these rappers and like been in all these sessions, like the next logical, exciting step for me as like a guy from Beverly Hills who's not supposed to be out here doing this is to like have credits on a rap record.
Yeah.
You got to put like, Pro Tools edits by Mike B like on this, on the second High and Mighty thing. And it came out and they didn't do it. And I was like,
Damn, yeah.
There was no disrespect. I mean, it's just, I'm sure that, making sure I got credit for the 7 edits I did was not at the top of their list when you're putting out an album,
Mm-hmm.
I got to thank you. I got a special thanks, which was a one step closer. But like when that Grand Theft Auto thing was coming out and I saw Sheck doing the artwork and it was going to be official with Rockstar Games and everything, I was like, make sure that it says, and I will say, I'll make a correction to it. I only recorded it. I did not mix that record. I don't think anybody mixed that record. I think it just was bounced from a Pro Tool session and then
really?
Put in the game. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Damn, man.
Red Spider did the beat. Red Spider was also signed to Stretch and I. He was signed to Spit.
That's so dope, bro, because that's just a pivotal point in my 12-year-old life.
Oh, yeah, you were 12 at the time. So you were listening to, what, you mean Grand Theft Auto?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I got that on my 12th birthday, I believe, or 13th birthday. And that was the first time I ever heard reggae and all that stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
What section was that? Scientist? What was the reggae station on there?
I forget what it was, but it was along those. Yeah.
It was like dub reggae though, right?
Yeah. But it was mad dope.
That was before Vice City. That was before they like licensed all the like real music, right?
Yeah, no, that was like on some underground, like no one knew who the fuck it was.
Because Game Radio, you weren't in the car for that long in Grand Theft Auto 3, as I recall. So, and even Game Radio, I think it was only like 5 tracks or something like that, right?
No, it was about, I want to say 5 stations. There was a Spanish one, there was a reggae one, there was a hip hop one.
I mean, on Game Radio, like the station that Stretch hosted, it was called Game Radio.
Yeah. There was only like 5-6 songs. Yeah,
like 5 or 6 songs, right? There was the song. I managed an artist called Laba, who had the song on there "By a Stranger."
Yeah,
the Game record, and then I forget there was something like there was some kind of nature song on there. Oh yeah, and then there was the Agala record, "Give It All That We Got, Take It to the Top."
Yeah.
And yeah, that was really, I mean, that was definitely something. And I can say that Grand Theft Auto 3 single-handedly got like me and my friends through like post 9/11 New York City. Like that dropped maybe like that came out in like November of 2001 or something like that, right? Like that was like
it was like top of 02. It was rough.
Like because that was a weird time, you know what I mean? And like Grand Theft Auto 3 was definitely like the first like I think real kind of post 9/11 joy.
Yeah,
like,
and it blew up. It was like the biggest thing ever. Like I think I kept that game. Like I didn't even buy Vice City because I didn't need it because 3 was just so good.
When Vice City came out, that's the first time I think I ever like purposely isolated myself like from the world. Like,
yeah, it was great.
I opened up that shit and I like fucking like I like scotch taped the map like to the wall.
Yeah,
my shit. You know what I mean? And I just had it, and I'm like, I need to get to fucking so and so island. Like I'm over here. I need to like, and you can listen to and like all those '80s records and all that shit.
All the '80s records, it was great. The Lamborghinis was available. Then you get on a moped and the motorcycles. First time you could have done that. So it was mad different. But 3 to me was like,
well, 3 was what really set it off.
Yeah, it was New York based, and it was dope.
And being a part of that, I remember was cool. And telling my friends that because it was one of the first things like I would come out to LA and they didn't know about like unless you really hung out at Fat Beats like that, you didn't really know about Game records. You know what I mean? Like people knew who it was, and people knew who Royce was or Blase or whoever, but like people weren't really getting those records didn't like do I think what Sheck thought. He was getting in at that time where you could sell 15,000, 20,000 copies of a record out of Fat Beats alone. Mm-hmm. And I think that was the beginning of the end of that.
The jiggy era was starting. Like, it was getting really jiggy.
There was a clear divide at that point. You know, like it's like when the term backpack just started coming around. And I feel like it can literally be traced to Stretch and Bobbito. It's like I was saying earlier, like any young genre when it's exciting and you know about it and there's only like a few dozen people doing it, like if you're a hip hop person, you're a hip hop person. Maybe there's one guy you like less than anyone else, or maybe you didn't like Rakim as much as you liked LL or whatever, but you still like were a hip hop guy.
Yeah.
But I think like I always say it's a combination of a lot of different things. And I think it's like Dr. Octagon. I feel like that's like the birth of like true nerd rap. Not like Freestyle Fellowship, like guys from LA just saying shit you can't understand.
Right.
Oh God.
Like shit that was directly appealing to like young white people and being like, you know, like I'm Kurt Cobain with devil wings and you know, and just like the shit that he was saying and working with Dan the Automator and having Qbert on there and bringing like, I feel like that's kind of the birth of what became like real nerdy rap. And then you have simultaneously De La Soul, Stakes is High, you know, the first non-Prince Paul produced like, no, like we're like real serious now. And like, that's to me, like besides J-Ru, kind of like one of the first albums where people are really talking about what they don't care for, you know what I mean? Like just whole songs about what you don't do and what you don't like, and like, you know, I don't go by Italian names and I don't wear these kind of pants and I don't sell drugs and I don't drive. Like, why the fuck are you telling me what you don't do? Like, who gives a shit what you don't? Like, tell me what you do. Like, who did you kill and like what drugs did you sell?
That was definitely a time where everything was split. It was like
it got real split, and so it was like that coming out, and then like you're playing yourself and things like that, and then ultimately resulting in the split of Stretch and Bobbito. Because at the end of the day, like that was the thing, was they were no longer just two guys at the forefront of a movement. They were dudes who had been doing this for 10 years and both had grown to have incredibly different tastes. And I think it's really well exemplified in the documentary, where they both kind of found like the most ridiculous examples of like, when they show like two, like it's like Bob Beto shows a guy and he's like, I'm like Pow, I'm like Wow, I'm like Pow, I'm like Zow. And then like they show another guy who's just like, I fucking destroy your fucking face and shoot up your fucking bitch. And but like it was just that it became real different to the point where they were splitting the radio show.
Yeah.
And that's when I started working for Stretch. Like within the first couple months that I was working for Stretch, I co-hosted WKCR one night. It was me,
really,
Grand, Becky Green, and PF Cut. And
wow, man.
It was a thing where we went up there and we just kind of like Jay Grand just started it because he's like, look, man, like I don't know where Stretch is at. I have all these promos to play and like let's go. And I think he's like the head, like not something like 10 guys I used to hang out with, and those guys have all taken turns being like the head of Def Jam. Wow. He's like the head of Warner Brothers now or something. But like Paul Rosenberg, Noah Callahan Bever, Joey IE, and like these are all dudes that were just like around and like homeboys back in the day, and they've all like been the head of Def Jam now for a while, which I think is pretty cool. It's a pretty cool thing to be.
God.
Did Spit ever release any singles?
We sent out some promos. We had the first guy we signed was a guy named FT from a group called Street Smarts. They had that record Metal Things. Which is a big KCRW or WKCR record.
Yeah, I love that record. Yeah,
it's incredible, right? Yeah, True Criminal Records.
I think the B-side was Problems. Bitches ain't nothing but problems. Can't live with them. Can't live without them. Yeah, that was a good.
It was the same sample that Dre used years later on 2001. But yeah, it was produced. And Metal Things was produced by Ron Browse actually. But
wow.
Yeah, Metal Things was Ron Browse, and then Problems was Buck Wild, and that was a big. And like the other guys in the group were kind of not as good as FT, or Fuck That as his name was. And that was the first guy we signed, and we put out a couple tracks with him, or like a promo through Sony, like a white label, and it never really went anywhere. And then we had a guy named Pretty Ugly, and he did a lot of crazy shit in his career, but putting out an album or a single with us was not one of them. But he's the guy that's on the Spit Game record. So yeah, in short, no, we didn't put out any singles. What we did put out was a compilation, because after 2 years and spending $1 million of Sony's money, they decided they were not going to renew our deal because we hadn't done anything.
Wow.
And the accountant hit us up and said, yo, there's $20,000 that you guys never used. That's a demo fund. And he said, if you don't use it in the next 2 weeks, it's just gone. So like figure out something to use it for. And like Stretch figured this. It was the fastest I ever saw him figure some shit out. He goes, yo, we could make a whole album for 20 grand in 2 weeks. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, get 10 producers. We get 10 rappers. We give them $1,000 each to make some new shit. And he's like, and then we'll use like a bunch of these songs that we already have recorded that are never going to come out. And we're going to use this Sony money. And then we're going to just put out this compilation on Landspeed. And it came out, and it's called Stretch Armstrong Presents Spit. And I want to say we sound scanned like 11,000 copies of that or something like that.
God damn! How the fuck did y'all blow through $1 million back then?
$1 million over the course of 2 years. When you're after the way I became a full-time employee was basically after that summer hit. So I'd been interning for Stretch for like 6 months, and the summer hit, and he didn't bring it up, to his credit. I'm the one who said to him, I said, yo, if I quit school, can you start paying me? And he was like, let me check. And then he was like, yeah, for sure. And so he had me on payroll. He had his personal assistant on payroll. He had his student. We had, half the rent of the office in Tribeca that we were splitting with Shecky. So that's some money right there. We have his whole studio, a brand new Pro Tools setup, mic booth, laptops,
right,
computer, there's all the things you need, and then you have sessions with the rappers that cost. My dude, man, I mean, you know, you're buying a new car every time you record like a verse in 2000. Like every time we were gonna do like record a new song for FT, you know, so it's like you get a beat from Buck Wild. You have to get a whole session at Chung King that costs like $10,000 for 12 hours for the night just to have him come out and like track out the beat. So that's just like one night. Then you pay for another night just to have the rapper sit there and write to it and order Chinese food and bring all his friends and hang out there for 10 hours. Maybe you record like a verse and a hook and like hopefully at some point the song gets done. But even to get like 3/4 of a song done, like, I mean, that's, you know, you're talking about like 25, 30 grand.
Such a different time, yo. That's crazy.
Jesus Christ.
Food delivery, paying people. I mean, engineers are getting $500 an hour. Car services, blunts. Like it was, you know, like every song cost, you know, over $10,000 to make.
That's fucking nuts. Yeah. I remember paying even myself $75 an hour back then for a studio. It was crazy.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot considering we can do everything at home now.
Yeah.
And I remember really having that put into perspective for me when we made that compilation where we made 10 tracks in 2 weeks for $2,000 a piece. I'm like, man, we could have been doing this the whole fucking time. Like, what were we doing in Chungking? We could have just been in your house with Royal Flush, like making these songs. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't take all that, but that was just how it was done. Like, that's how, you know, Sony executives weren't trying to pop in on sessions at Stretch's house. Like, you had to come to Chungking and you had to have, you know, 40 Diet Cokes and everyone had to have a $50 delivery meal. And like, it was, you know, like the money had to be spent.
Jesus.
I mean, I remember like the money that was being thrown around in the music industry at that time. Like, I remember when they did the video for B-Boy Document 99 that Mighty Mai was like, man, they're only giving us like $250,000 to do this video. Like, that's fucked up. Like, that's not enough, you know? Like, it wasn't enough. And like, they spent all the money on like Terrell Hicks or something.
That video was kind of bad too, man. kind of awful.
Well, yeah, because they only had $250,000.
Only a quarter, bro. Only a quarter.
At the time was like not shit, because you know what I mean. Like, to do a video back then, like Hype Williams alone was getting like $1 million. You know what I mean? $1 million video for a major label single like wasn't shit. I mean, now Rihanna videos cost like $7,500.
Yeah,
which is wild.
Because a bunch of lights in a room.
Adjust for inflation, like these videos were costing more than movies. You know what I mean? Like for $250,000, you can make like a Netflix movie right now.
That's true.
Yeah.
And like I remember like Mighty Mai being like, and I even remember being like, damn, yeah, like that's whack. Like Raucus should really be giving me more money than
the $250,000. That's fucking nuts. Hey yo, Mike, I think we're reaching our time. So we're hitting like the over 2 hour mark. So, but I want to get you back on. We got to like talk some more shit.
I know, right? This always happens. I'm long winded, and like the stories are deep and windy.
No, it's amazing. It's amazing. I love it.
I hope there's some like useful narrative and all.
Oh no, it was great. Bro.
No, there is.
It's amazing.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, this is amazing, bro. It's
Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much for having me, man. It's always a pleasure to tell these stories, and like, as someone who's seen so many things, but like not necessarily enough that I deserve credit for anything, but like I got a lot of stories, you know what I mean? And I got to see a lot of shit. It's cool to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, hopefully somebody cares. I'm glad you guys care.
No, I've been wanting you on for a minute now. And to me, you've always been an instrumental, like representation of the LA club scene, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And since I was first going to LA in the 2000s, you know, so it was always the Mike B. Yo, let's go check the Mike B. And I'm actually mad that I didn't have you on sooner. So thanks for coming through, man. I appreciate it.
It was perfect, man, and we'll do it again, man. We got plenty more stories to tell. And
definitely, I want to get Shecky on with you one day, so we can just go back.
That'd be great.
Has Shek done the show?
Yeah, he did. Like the first year. I got to get Shecky, and then And then Mighty My, hopefully he won't smoke up before he comes on, but like, yeah.
Yeah, he smoked a lot last time.
He
on
was
the
as
show.
high as shit.
He smoked before he got to the show. So
he was so zooted.
Smoke before the show started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like even more rambly.
Yeah, he lit up in between the session.
It's crazy.
But yeah, Shecky was the one who told me about the podcast. Actually, I want to say like when did you guys start? Like 3 years ago?
Yeah, 3.
Yeah.
He hit me up and he's like, "You got to check out the road, man." He's like, "That's what's up."
Yeah.
So he's still putting me on years later. So
Still.
Respect.
Shecky's the best, man. He's the best. What do you call
Nobody.
it? And then, but yo, thank you, man. Mike B, appreciate you coming through, man. Jamie, you want to take us out?
Yeah. If you want to watch this video alongside all the brand new videos that we drop every Friday, go subscribe to youtube.com/R.O.A.D podcast. Make sure you like, you comment, you subscribe, you hit the notification bell to be the first one to get the video on a Friday. And
also check us on Sundays on twitch.tv/R.O.A.D podcast. Every Sunday at 8 p.m. PST. And then, Mike, are you on Twitch? Are you doing any Twitch shit?
Maybe. There's certainly a channel, twitch.com/TheMikeB. I got about 82 followers right now and no content.
Nice.
I've been posting a campaign that says when I get to 100, I'll do something special.
Well, you've been on like Fool's Gold Records.
I do a show on the Mad Decent Twitch.
Mad Decent, yeah, there you go.
And I've done like Twitch gigs, and things, but I have not. It's quite a step to take. There's a lot.
It is, man.
Twitch is quite a Ponzi scheme, and I don't know if I'm all the way ready to go all the way in on that yet.
Yo, you sound good though. I caught a couple of your streams, and they were dope, man. And you go all out.
I do. I mean,
you move fast, bro. For a big dude, you move fast, man.
Yeah.
I was very shocked. I was like, that's a nimble motherfucker right there.
Yeah.
I've been saying this since I was in high school. I'm very agile for a fat man.
Yeah. You was making, I was like, damn, this motherfucker's quick.
I'm a dancer, dude, you know?
All right, man. Well, keep a lookout for the Mike B on the Mad Decent, and hopefully he'll do some Twitch streams up there. But definitely, always a pleasure, brother. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you guys, man.
All right, Mike.
All right, D.
Peace.
Peace.